An AI company just decided it wants to invent your next prescription drug. Not the software the drug company uses, the drug itself. Anthropic, the maker of Claude, is quietly moving into the one industry that could dwarf every dollar it makes from chatbot. And if that works, it changes who controls the medicine you'll one day take. The company that writes your code wants to write your biology. Here's why this is landing right now. Anthropic just held an event called the Briefing AI for Science. That's where they unveiled Claude Science, an AI workbench built specifically for researchers. The players matter here. Anthropic, backed by Amazon and Google, is squaring off against OpenAI and a growing pack of AI for biology startups. There's a twist here almost no one is talking about. Most coverage treats this as another product launch. It isn't. It's a signal about where this company actually intends to make its money. So let's get concrete about what Claude Science even is. According to The Verge, it's an AI workbench for scientists that pulls fragmented tools and datasets into one environment. Think about how a real researcher works today. They've got data in one system, analysis in another, literature scattered across a dozen tabs, and figures they build by hand in yet another program. That fragmentation costs weeks. Claude Science collapses that. It generates figures and visuals directly, turning raw output into publication-ready material. What does that mean for you if you're anywhere near research, pharma, or biotech? Your workflow is the product now. The tedious middle layer of science, the wrangling, the formatting, the cross-referencing, is exactly what this tool eats. That's the loop closing. This isn't a chatbot with a lab coat. It's infrastructure aimed at the guts of scientific work. But a workbench for scientists is not the same as a company that develops its own drugs. And that gap is the whole story. A like on this does more than you think to get it seen, because the framing Anthropic chose at that event points somewhere far more ambitious than selling software subscriptions. This next part changes the whole picture. Here's the angle almost no one is spelling out. Anthropic already dominates a specific corner of AI, coding tools. Claude is the model developers reach for when they want reliable code. That's a real defensible business. So why pivot toward science and eventually toward developing drugs? Because selling tools to an industry is a low ceiling compared to owning the output of that industry. Look at the incentive structure. If Anthropic sells Claude Science to a pharma company, it earns a subscription fee. If Anthropic uses Claude to discover a compound and holds a stake in that compound, it earns a share of a drug that can generate billions over its patent life. One of those is a software margin. The other is a pharmaceutical fortune. So, who's the villain, who benefits, and who's stuck in the middle? The beneficiary is Anthropic and its investors, Amazon and Google, who get exposure to healthcare without building a single wet lab from scratch. The one caught in the middle is the working scientist, the person whose expertise gets absorbed into a model that then competes with the very institutions that trained it. And the quiet loser could be traditional pharma, whose slow, expensive discovery pipelines suddenly look ancient. Think about what that means for you personally if you work in a lab. The tool that saves you 3 weeks is also learning how you think. Don't drop off now. The ending ties this together. Here's the surprising part. Anthropic isn't trying to replace pharmaceutical companies by outspending them on labs and trials. It's trying to change what the scarce resource in drug discovery actually is. For a century, the bottleneck was talent and time, brilliant people slowly testing ideas. Anthropic's bet is that the bottleneck becomes compute and models. Whoever owns the best reasoning engine owns the fastest path from a biological question to a viable molecule. That's why we want to develop our own drugs. Is not a side hobby. It's the logical end of building the smartest scientific reasoner on the planet. If your AI can genuinely reason through biology, sitting on the sidelines selling it by the seat is leaving the real money and the real power on the table. Here's exactly what happens next. Within 2 years, expect Anthropic to announce a formal drug discovery arm or a deep partnership where it takes equity, not just fees, in the compounds Claude helps find. The chatbot war was the warm-up. The real fight is over who owns the science itself. And that fight has already started. Before I go, here's your tech tip of the day. If you use large language models for any real analysis work, stop pasting raw data into the chat window. Instead, use structured output prompting. Tell the model explicitly, return your answer as valid JSON with these exact keys. Define the schema you want, field names, data types, allowed values. Why this matters. Free-form AI responses are almost impossible to pipe into other tools, but structured JSON drops straight into a script, a spreadsheet, or a database. You go from copy-pasting by hand to automating an entire pipeline. Most people never do this and wonder why their AI workflows stay manual. Add one line, defining your output schema, and you've turned a chatbot into a component you can build on. That is your tip for today. If Anthropic really does start owning the drugs it discovers, the entire pharma power structure shifts. Tell me in the comments, does an AI company belong in your medicine cabinet? Want more like this? Subscribe to FutureEdge, a fresh one daily.